All right, so episode 63. Well, with the 4th of July now behind us, we are kind of entering this second half of summer. And if you experienced the same social feed as I did, you were probably just overwhelmed with stories of fireworks, boats, hot dogs, and desserts with berries that were carefully laid out in the shape of an American flag. But hot take, I personally think the 4th of July is an overrated holiday. I'm not a big drinker. I don't like fireworks. I think they're just dangerous and stupid, and my dog is on edge the entire night, which sucks. The food is mediocre compared to other holidays. But, after further, reflection, I thought maybe I'm just not doing it right, maybe I never really gave the 4th of July the chance that it deserves. I mean, there are some amazing things about a relaxing summer afternoon. So what exactly is the problem, As I dissected kind of the individual pieces of my previous summers, like the food, the activities, even like the fashion, for example, I thought maybe it's the West Coast version of a 4th of July that I don't really like. Now, personally, I've never really experienced an East Coast 4th of July, but with social media these days, you're just obviously exposed to a lot of different content and other people, obviously. And East Coast summer core is just it seems pretty fucking good. For example, I've been getting a lot of content from these personal chefs who go and cook out in the Hamptons for people, and just wow, does a Hamptons vacation sound incredible. It's just something I've never remotely experienced before. Wishbone Kitchen right now is opening my eyes to this whole Hamptons lifestyle, and it seems pretty hard to beat. So today I'm kind of pinning the two coasts against each other, and we're going to decide which coast is better for a summer celebration. But let's start with one of the easier aspects of this debate, which I think is the food. Personally, I think that East Coast summer food is better than West Coast summer food. You've got lobster rolls, crab dishes. You're closer to the South, so you probably have better barbecue. You've got Carolina pulled pork, for example. The Northeast is known for their hot dogs and cheesesteaks. You've also got a larger concentration of Italian Americans up there. So, that's going to for me at least, it's going to weigh in heavily to the decision making on who's got the better food. The West Coast obviously has Mexican food, which is absolutely amazing no matter what time of year it is. But my white ass family wasn't cooking any good Mexican food in years past. It was cheeseburgers, hot dogs, watermelon, corn, and potato salad or pasta salad. That was pretty much just what you were eating Memorial Day through Labor Day. Do I even dare even move on to desserts? I did some deep, just much needed research into popular traditional desserts by states, and I was just overwhelmingly disappointed with the West Coast. You've got the Meyer lemon cake, which originated in China and then came to California in the early 1900s, and this was one of their premier desserts. But I mean, I guess I enjoy lemon cake with a cup of coffee, but I'm never craving this dessert. Then out of Oregon, the most notable dessert is the Marion berry pie. Again, I've never requested this dessert. I've never even had it. Washington is known for something called the Nanaimo bar. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it consists of 3 layers: a wafer, nut, and coconut crumb base, custard icing in the middle, and then on the top layer is a chocolate ganache. It kind of looks like a brownie with thin white icing in the middle. I definitely tried this, but coconut is kind of a hit or miss for me. I think it's kind of one of those foods that you're I love it or I hate it, but as a main ingredient in the States dessert, I think that's very polarizing. The best dessert that I found, though, on the West Coast was invented by a Los Angeles-based candy maker in 1906, and it is the hot fudge sundae. Definitely there's no dispute that this is a classic, but let me just show you what the East Coast has to offer. You've got the black and white cookie, the Boston cream pie, Georgia peach cobbler, Florida's key lime pie, And then one thing that kept coming up was the northeastern whoopie pie. And from my understanding of it, it's like two cake-like chocolate cookies with a fluffy like vanilla icing in the middle. It looks like an Oreo cakester, for example, which sounds pretty fucking good to me. But the dessert that like screams summer are s'mores, right? Personally, they're not my favorite. They're a little too messy. Your hands get like really sticky, and there's never really like good angle to kind of attack it at. But it's more about like the bonfire experience, right, with a s'more. But for the life of me, I couldn't find where this thing originated. So I guess I'd say it's kind of like a neutral player in this East Coast, West Coast debate. Shall we move on to fashion? I feel like there are just two very distinct, it's like summer looks when it comes to male fashion for West Coast versus East Coast. West Coast fashion is very like obviously beach inspired, surf culture. So it's much more like casual and relaxed. We're talking like baggy shirts, lightweight flannels, snapback hats. It's very laid back, like I said. East Coast summer fashion is much more polished and put together. You got linens, polos, everything's a little more fitted. Honestly, I like both. I think they both have a lot to offer. The West Coast fashion, I think, is much more realistic and practical, though. Like if I'm enjoying the day on the beach, I'm not putting on like a Ralph Lauren fucking button up. And then one thing I can't get on board with are the boat shoes. You will never just see me in a pair of Sperry's, and I don't like how it's a part of like this East Coast culture. I do think, though, that one thing that I have missed out on throughout my many summers is going on a boat. Boat culture is very prevalent, obviously, on both coasts, whether it be like the ocean or a lake. But growing up in Nevada, you're landlocked, obviously, so I didn't really have too many opportunities to go boating. There's like Lake Mead, which is like over an hour away. That's where like the Hoover Dam is, for example. But I think I've only been out on that water like once or twice. We were just never a big like boat family. I was always kind of like low-key grossed out by Lake Mead for some reason too. Like there's a big difference between Lake Mead and Lake Tahoe, which is in northern Nevada and California. And Lake Tahoe is just like crystal clear. And Lake Mead, you've got bodies and barrels like literally getting washed up every few years. So it's not the best. And I've never been on a sailboat, which sounds like fun, but potentially also a lot of work. It kind of reminds me of that video game, Sea of Thieves. You're just constantly like, you got a lot to do in that game. Someone's steering, you're like hoisting jibs. I don't know, like repairing the boat in some way. It doesn't really sound very relaxing, like a relaxing summer day to me. I do respect the sailing sweater, though. A good solid just fisherman's sweater should be a nice addition to any closet. But to me, though, that whole like sailing nautical vibe is definitely way more intertwined, I think, with the East Coast culture, like rowing too. Whereas, example, surfing is much more closely tied with the West Coast, Huntington Beach, Southern California kind of culture, in my opinion. Now, before I just outrightly say how an East Coast 4th of July sounds better than a West Coast 4th of July, let me point out two big kind of summer negatives that the East Coast has, in my opinion at least. First, you got way more bugs on the East Coast than you do on the West Coast. We went to New Jersey in the summer a few times when I was like a teenager. And if you were sitting by the pool and like you weren't paying attention, there were these massive, just like green flies that would fucking bite the shit out of you out of nowhere. And like you never have to deal with that at least in Vegas, but not really in Southern California either. And on the East Coast, you also have to worry about like ticks and I guess getting like Lyme's disease, because like if you walk in any tall grass, as far as I know, like you're getting a fucking tick on you, and that's just no good. A pain in the ass, just like bug, will completely ruin an experience for me. For example, we went out to dinner the other night and sat outside to eat, and there were these two just like massive fucking flying beetles that were like the size, like each is the size of like a hummingbird, and they were like just going around all these people, and the whole time I'm fucking like side-eyeing these things as I'm eating, and I can't even look at my food because I know the second that I look down, they're gonna like start gunning it in our direction. Like literally like after my last bite, I just had so much anxiety. I was like, we got to get out of here. Like, I can't enjoy this experience right now. But anyways, the second biggest East Coast summer negative has got to be the humidity. This is a very just difficult challenge for me to overcome. I would rather take dry heat all day than struggle with humidity. Obviously, you're going to prefer like whichever environment that you're like acclimated to and grew up in. But man, humidity is just suffocating to me. On our honeymoon, it was like 70 to 80% humidity. And there were just some points in the day where I was sitting outside and I was just dying. And I'm assuming that's around like the same levels of humidity for an East Coast summer. So if I like were to experience this, like I think I need to make it like at least in a week-long vacation in order to get acclimated. So overall though, what are my takeaways? Instead of saying, I don't like the 4th of July, maybe I just haven't experienced the right one yet, like the right kind of 4th of July. And I think the East Coast has a lot to offer, maybe some stuff that I'm like not just used to. I can experience the charm of a clam bake or like a seaside boutique that sells antique lighthouses. Who the hell knows? Maybe that's what I need. I mean, thankfully I've got a lot of time still and the date's just always marked on the calendar. And not to get like too like political or anything though, but I kind of find it like slightly ironic how today centered around like American pride, and I don't know, the nation is just extremely divided right now. It kind of just feels like everyone just ignores that for a day. But hey, if you're going to put a lobster roll in my hand, I'll stay quiet too. So anyways, in the meantime, I'm just enjoying the small city vibes that Tucson has to offer right now. I think it's been a good summer. It's not too hot, thankfully. Like Vegas, I feel like was way more hotter for some reason. But thanks for listening. I appreciate it. I hope you had a great week. Unrelated, mine was incredibly stressful, but hey, we're getting through it. And it's nice to be able to distract myself with these mindless scenarios like which coast I plan a make-believe 4th of July trip for someday. So with that, I will leave you. Thank you.